Good morning. It's Friday, November 21st. You're watching The Really Big Show on Now Media. I'm Andrea Jensenberg, filling in for Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns. How are you this morning?
I'm joyous, absolutely joyous. How are you doing?
Also joyous. We've only got one more month of the weather getting darker, and then it'll keep. Got some big headlines today. Northern Pipeline. BC's answer remains the same. Never. Bell lays off 700 employees. 500,000 Canadians left the ER last year without seeing a doctor. Grandchildren of citizens abroad have been granted Canadian citizenship. Well, status. And is the end of the Russia-Ukraine war finally in sight? And a group of Alaskan Tribal nations is claiming rights to Canadian resource projects. Kicking it off, Ottawa and Alberta have been engaged in talks about approving a pipeline that would run to the north coast of BC. However, there's still many barriers to overcome, and we are going to hear from a few people on this.
I won't comment on an article with anonymous sources.
CBC News has confirmed what the Globe and Mail first reported. As the feds discuss a new energy accord with Alberta, they've agreed to possible exemptions to the current tanker ban on BC's northern coast.
I don't want to prejudge what may happen.
BC Liberals, though, say a new oil pipeline is a hard sell.
It's going to have provincial buy-in and Indigenous support.
They're going to need to ensure that there's actually a proponent for this. I have not heard a private sector proponent.
The news that Ottawa could soften coastal protections is not welcome by some.
Certainly disappointing hearing that the tanker ban will be bypassed for the sake of a pipeline.
BC shores are seeing increased LNG shipments, something that has buy-in from some First Nations. A potential pipeline to ship diluted bitumen is another matter.
Having discussions about a hypothetical project that has no private sector proponent at this time, it actually distracts from all the good work we could be doing together.
If Alberta and Ottawa reach a deal, it could put an end to years of bad blood.
Obviously, Smith was not a fan of Trudeau and the Trudeau Liberals. Probably the same could be said in reverse.
Mending that rift, though, could strain alliances that keep the Liberal minority government intact.
You can't pretend an oil tanker isn't going to break apart and contaminate the coasts, sloshing back and forth oil.
Officials on both sides remain tight-lipped, concerned media leaks could torpedo sensitive talks. But the Alberta Premier's office confirms that they're in the final stages of negotiations.
That was action-packed, wasn't it? That was a magnificent little package from CBC. And the oil sloshing back and forth.
That one's been getting a lot of time.
Well, just because she's mad, isn't she? And obviously wrong, like I said yesterday. Just get your map out. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to get nautical maps. Just get an old-fashioned map. Anybody can do it. But, I mean, it makes me a little bit... it causes me to feel sad, actually, this, because the political discourse in this country is so low grade. It's almost, they often say, like, when you pitch your ideas as a politician, it should be to sort of like the 90 IQ level or something like that. Or like they'll usually do it by age, like so somebody who's 15 years old or something like that. I don't know what IQ level we're at now. In the 60s, maybe. This is just atrocious. Like as usual, I watch these interviews of our lords and masters speaking, and I just feel insulted. It's just non-stop insults. Like Ravi K, and we're going to look at David Eby later, the biggest insult of all. They keep telling us things that most people by now know are just ridiculous. Like, oh, there's no private proponent. It's completely hypothetical. I think we're all old enough. I think we all have an IQ over 60, just about. Sorry to those that don't, but almost everybody is over 60, right? We're okay in that department. I think we all understand what's going on here and that there's no private company because there are laws in place that prevent them from investing, obviously. So why are we still hearing it? Why are we still hearing this nonsense? And then these Liberal MPs as well, like they're so sour-faced, aren't they? They're so upset about this. Like Jonathan Wilkinson, like, it's just like the misery on their faces. It's it's all just a bit sad, you know. It's like you could weep fresh tears for Canada when you see the state of the political discourse.
Well, and when you see the state of our economy, you could also weep some tears. And another bit from CBC on this pipeline, the power and politics.
A northern pipeline, when there is the more southern TMX option on the table, and the calibration there to take the easy pipeline path and not risk the other projects in pursuit of a tougher pipeline path. I mean, is that a saleable thing to the people of Alberta?
Well, I mean, I'm not the people of Alberta, but I can tell you that I don't understand why you would have to say that we lose all of the projects in LNG and mining if we build a pipeline. I don't see that trade-off.
Well, the First Nations have said their consent for the LNG and mining projects is conditional on the preservation of the tanker ban. And the pipeline can't go ahead without at least a partial exemption and removal of the tanker ban. So they say they'll pull their consent if that happens.
Right, but I'm sure that there's negotiation that can always happen around these kinds of process these kinds of positions that are taken at the beginning. So I don't necessarily think it's binary that you have one or the other. I also would say in response to either or expand TMX or have a secondary pipeline, I'm in the why not both category. And I know that's probably not super popular, but the way I look at the Canadian economy right now, we have a very large problem in the medium and long term, and we need to have revenues flowing in this country. And as a result, we need to be able to tap into what we have naturally, which is oil and gas. And I'm not ashamed or afraid to say that publicly. I do think we can do this in an environmentally responsible way, taking into consideration all the concerns and get it done like we normally do in Canada. And quite frankly, our prosperity is at risk here.
Our prosperity is at risk, and Alberta is looking to double oil exports by 2035, which is why they are wanting the second pipeline.
So the woman that was just talking there was a Conservative Party MP and minister, I think, as well, wasn't she? Quite a senior figure within the Conservative Party. Supposed to be the right opposition to the left governing Liberals. And she was asked, like, something very, very basic, really straightforward was put to her. The First Nations have said, the coastal First Nations, that their consent for the LNG projects that BC are putting forward is conditional upon the oil tanker ban remaining in place. And her response was, well, we'll just negotiate. You know, do you see why some people look at the Conservative Party in Canada and they just say, what is the point of that thing? What the hell is that thing? I mean, an answer to that question. These people make me feel like Alexander the Great sometimes, cutting the Gordian knot. I feel like I'm I'm not the only person, but I must be one of the only people that says, make a new law. Parliament is sovereign. Make a new law. You can change anything. You can change the Constitution. You can just do things, as the meme says on the internet. You can literally just do things. Write a law. It can just be a piece of paper saying, we nullify this, pass it in Parliament, and then it doesn't really matter what these First Nations say. But for some reason, that's like beyond the pale or something. It's like completely unconscionable. Nobody could possibly say that. So the Gordian knot remains tied, and everybody sat there like, gee, how do we untie this knot? It's just getting me worked up a bit now, but I just find that so frustrating. This is supposed to be a country based on the rule of law. Change the law, you know? It's that easy. Just because a band of like 80 people, dozens of people, maybe sometimes hundreds of people says, no, this nation building project will not go ahead. You know, there is an alternative to that, which is, yes, it will.
Yeah, and that's a lot of power to be giving these small groups. What does David Eby have to say about the expansion? Let's hear from him.
Do have to say I almost fell out of my seat when I heard Scott Moe say that he was part of these conversations and was helping in these discussions, which I was completely unaware of, between Alberta, Saskatchewan, and the federal government about what happens in British Columbia. I feel like I'm watching a couple tourists wearing sandals wander into the woods on the north shore of Vancouver. They're going to have to be rescued by a helicopter, and guess who has to send the helicopter? You know, in terms of British Columbia's knowledge about the stakeholders, about what's required, about any aspect of this pipeline, which does not actually exist, I think we can bring some information to the table. Do have to.
I think he goes on in that interview to say it's an imaginary pipeline and there's no investment proponents, but he fails to acknowledge his part in the lack of investment potential for this pipeline.
I feel like this news load is designed to see if you can push me over the edge, see if you can get me to crash out, as the kids say, because I'm ready to explode now. I lived in Vancouver for a bit. I'm sure most people in BC have been there many times. Is there a more perfect representative of Vancouver than this man? With that passive-aggressive, snobby arrogance, looking down on people. Like, it's like they're working in the North Shore, and who's going to hurt it? This man is supposed to be like a serious, responsible individual, and he's acting like some sort of sullen Vancouverite in Lululemon pants, denying you service because you LGBT flag pin on your shirt or something like that. It's absolutely astonishing, despicable behavior from this man. And again, he is the guy that came out and said, I'm a Canadian first. He's not even from BC anyway, but I mean, whatever. But he said, oh, it's not just about BC. I'm Canadian first. Where is the evidence that he puts Canada first? I am yet to see it, because it's all just about British Columbia, and everyone else is a rascal. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, the Atlantic provinces, everybody is an enemy to British Columbia in the perspective of David Eby. And it's the same thing every time. And I'm starting to think, and I said this the other day, I'm starting to think that the Liberal Party, or at least Mark Carney, are starting to notice that. And it's just like, what's the point of doing business with this guy? Like, he really is just, it's BC or nothing. That's his attitude. Well, so in that scenario, okay, maybe just do business with Danielle Smith, who is very much Alberta first. But at least when she does that, it's going to bring massive revenues to Canada. So, to the federal government. So let's just do that then.
And while they have been leaving him out of talks, he was not happy that the Saskatchewan premier was included and not him. And finally, on this subject matter, hopefully this one doesn't fully tip you off the edge, we are going to hear from Avi Lewis, who's a BC NDP MP. He actually made a bid for leadership, and this is his view on the pipeline.
When it comes to the question of LNG, I want to be really clear. I'm a British Columbian NDPer, and I am very grateful for our NDP government in this province. But when it comes to LNG, so many of us are heartbroken, we are utterly mystified, and we are frankly enraged at the fact that our NDP government is going full bore on this fossil fuel. The citizenship project, re-announced by Carney this week, should not proceed, in my view. Absolutely not. It's US owned and operated. The backers of it are Trumpian billionaire bad guys. And like many BCers, I'm totally opposed to it. You know that companies and governments have for a long time peddled the PR spin that natural gas is a bridge to a clean energy future. The bridge is burning. It is no kind of bridge. Methane is the most potent greenhouse gas in the next 20 years when we must make this societal shift. It leaks at the fracking site, it leaks at the liquefaction site, it leaks when they're putting it on the tankers. We must choose a different path. This is no bridge to the future. And we can't just oppose conservative or liberal projects like this. We need to have the bravery to say to any government of any stripe that is building new pipelines and new fossil fuel infrastructure, this shall not pass. Now, here's the thing. We're allowed to disagree within the NDP family. I'm fighting for a federal NDP that will be utterly clear on climate, and that means getting off fossil fuels, protecting workers, and protecting our shared future. And at the same time, I support and appreciate and love the BC NDP government for everything that it's doing on housing. We got $10 a day childcare in this province. BC is always the first on those expansions of the social safety net. We got free post-secondary tuition for youth in care. We're making the tax system more progressive in BC. And I feel more than one thing at once, like we all do. We can have conflicting feelings and positions together. The problem is the establishment media is waiting to pounce on any disagreement, to declare circular firing squad on the left, NDP family fight, etc. We're not going to let them do that. We are allowed to have respectful disagreements within the NDP family. It is a democratic party. If you're confused, it's right there.
They always fail to mention that all that methane gas leaking, not really a blip on the global emission scale.
Yeah, maybe, this might be a low blow, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm going low. Would it surprise anybody to learn that this man is quite wealthy, prosperous man, and he's married to a very, very famous woman, an author called Naomi Klein, also very wealthy. Is it a surprise to anyone? I mean, I always feel like, should I just leave it there? Why else would you be opposed to wealth generation? And then, in place of actual wealth generation, which would be LNG, things like that, natural resources. In place of that, it's, oh, let's just we'll just build a unicorn factory and we'll power it with solar panels and everything's going to be great, guys. There's a reason that people stopped listening to this kind of man a long time ago, and
I'd say there's a reason.
That's pretty much all I've got to say.
NDP has almost it did fall out of official party status, didn't it? With the latest.
The federal NDP did, yeah, indeed, which is what he fancies himself as leader of.
Meanwhile, in the States, Trump is planning huge oil drilling expansions off the coasts of California and Alaska.
Yeah, this is the Alaska one in particular, because they also have gas going out of there, don't they? That is a real sort of concern to BC, I think, and Canada, because we can only really export from the Pacific coast. And if we have a direct rival there, because one of the great advantages is that it's not from the Gulf of America, as I should call it now, so it doesn't have to go through the Panama Canal and mess about with that longer journey. It can just go straight up past the Aleutian Islands and all that and down to Asia, and it's a much shorter transit. That's like one of the big selling points, isn't it? When the Canadian companies go and try and get these contracts in Asia. But especially if Alaska is there, then that's...
Yeah, the Panama Canal is not what it once was. Water levels dropping, so it's harder to get things through. But yeah, they're expanding, and how many years would it take us, even if we do approve this pipeline? Will they just have capitalized on our market by the time we get around to it?
Well, and the Americans really aren't messing around at all. They're very, very serious about. I mean, this is the thing. It's not. A lot of people are like, "Oh, this is Trump. It's all about Trump." Not really. That's not a satisfactory explanation, really, because the shale revolution occurred under the presidency of Barack Obama, which is the most consequential event in energy in the last sort of like 50 or 60 years or something like that. That was, the Democrats are also quite sensible, at least compared to the NDP and Liberals, if you want to do a country to country comparison. So, this has been going on a while. The Americans, when it comes to energy, this is the thing. It's a bit like defense. When it comes to defense, when it comes to energy, the Americans don't mess around because they know that there's no daddy. They know that they are the daddy. Whereas in a country like this, we all secretly, in some cases, know that, we have a daddy called America who will protect us. And therefore, we can mess about with stupid things and stupid ideas, and we can not bother building a military and all the rest of it. But the Americans, they all know that that's not the case for them. Like, the buck really does stop with the Americans. So they, as a consequence, they're a bit more serious about this kind of thing. So it is of great concern from a Canadian perspective, I think.
And back to Canadian news, Danielle Smith has announced that she's tabling a law called the Peterson Law after Jordan Peterson, and it's a plan to protect free expression.
I thought you said freak expression. But yeah, it's
It was, free speech outside of the workplace. Anything you say outside of the workplace should not have any bearing on your employment status, is what I understood this law to be proposing.
It's related to all those colleges and regulatory bodies that professionals in Canada have to join and have such happy, harmonious relationships with. I mean, every professional I know in Canada just absolutely loves these regulatory bodies. They can't get enough of them. And one of the best things about them is that they will search your social media accounts, or they'll watch TV and see if you're interviewed, and if you say something that they don't like, then they'll punish you and take your license away and things like that. I mean, who doesn't love that? Pretty great, I think, anyway. And Danielle Smith has said, I mean, weirdly, she said she doesn't like that, and she said she's gonna stop that. I'll narrow the sort of the jurisdiction that they have, let's say, so that it's just about when they're actually at work. So if it's a doctor or whatever, just when they're in the hospital, not if they do an interview afterwards or something like that. They're not supposed to be punishable for that. But also, the Justice Minister in Alberta came out and said, it's attached, saying any training that, in his words, is intended to further a political, social, or cultural objective, which people have read between the lines and said that that's like DEI stuff, the kind of critical theory that's in recent years been sneaking into every aspect of Canadian society. So it's also that, and so that means no more gender workshops, no more transgenderism in the workplace training sessions. And the NDP obviously has come out and said that this is a law for extreme right-wing fringe people. And they've said what it says is people should be able to say all kinds of vile, inappropriate, incorrect things outside of their professional work. So the NDP doesn't like it.
Yeah, I'd say it's a free speech. Say whatever you want to outside of work. And about 500,000 Canadians left ERs without seeing a doctor last year. Just another story piling on to the failing healthcare system here.
And the doctors interview, this is a CBC, they did they did quite a few freedom of information requests, I think, and put something together. So actually some good work from the CBC, which we do highlight when they're good, as well as when they're bad. But one of the doctors in the story has come out and said, very rarely does he work a shift and not see somebody that was there the previous day and had just given up the previous day, but had come back. And he says they come back much sicker, in his words, which is kind of obvious, isn't it? And I mean, much sicker, at least they're alive. Because obviously most people by now have read news stories on things like sepsis and how quickly that develops, and how, it's like time is very much of the essence with something like sepsis, isn't it? So God knows how many people have actually died while waiting. And then the other thing it doesn't account for is people that just didn't go. Like, I can say myself, a number of times I've just not gone because I just thought, like, why am I going to go there and sit down for 12 hours in, like, possibly the most miserable place in the world? Like, I'm just going to stay home and self-medicate or something.
Yeah, well, there's lots of germs going about that ER department. And we've seen rolling closures here in the interior of ER departments.
Yeah, so that adds. So not only do you have to wait for like 12 hours or whatever, but you in some cases have to drive 3 hours or something through the mountains because your local hospital is shut down its ER.
Indeed. And J.D. Vance, the vice president, has attacked Canada's immigration insanity, which there's no doubt has put strain on our healthcare system. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just we've got a couple of stories here about immigration. There's this one, but there's also the Conservatives have come out and highlighted the asylum system,
trying to get
or what they consider to be flaws in the asylum system. Yeah, but Vance, he said this kind of thing a number of times, but I think this is quite interesting because, he's displaying a bit of knowledge of Canada. Like, he's talking about CBC and stuff. It seems, even though it might sting a lot of people, it does seem like this is coming ultimately from a good place. Like, he is trying to do what he thinks is good rather than just sort of mindlessly attack Canada. I know some people will take it that way.
I like the
but
line.
Canada is an outlier. Canada's an outlier among the outliers. So even next to countries like Britain, that just went absolutely, truly insane with immigration after COVID, Canada is an outlier even compared to those countries. Canada is basically like a global pariah, the global outlier. There's nobody like Canada when it comes to immigration under the Trudeau administration, Trudeau regime. So you know, this is kind of old news to people who've been following this sort of thing. Even Justin Trudeau himself said it was insane, or he said that it was bad anyway. So yeah, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, about Canada's reputation and how it's not quite what people might think. Like this is often what I hear when I talk to people who outside of Canada, people who aren't Canadian, and talk about Canada. It's often this subject comes up, like, oh yeah, you went crazy with immigration, didn't you? It's like, indeed.
And then if you point to immigration being a problem, often you're called a racist. However, I would say that even if you immigrated that number of people from America, from Britain, same problems. It's the sheer volume. It's not who we've immigrated. I've lost my slide.
To be honest, there have always been opportunists. If you study any period of history, really, where migration has occurred, including Canada's early history,
disruption
or earlier history, these opportunists pop up all the time. And obviously racism or racist is a new term, relatively speaking, so it's quite a recent term. But there'd be other terms employed, like xenophobic or whatever. Used to use the term alien, so it'd be anti-alien and things like that. There have been people that have popped up all the time and tried to say that. Sometimes they would wrap it up in Christianity and say it's not Christian of you to oppose immigration. You know, so somebody like Mark Miller, former immigration minister for the Liberal Party, he might think that he's on the cutting edge of, you know, the intellect, and he might think that he's a smart guy that knows his onions, but he's just repeating what so many other opportunists throughout history have done, and that is basically to call people racist because they want to regulate how many people come into their country.
And as the Canadian economy is sliding, the American economy is set to grow 4%. Got a clip to play here.
You know, we've been talking about this 4% growth that we've seen in the U.S. economy over the last 6 months. I want to contrast that with what's happening in the rest of the world, where, look at, Europe is flatlined, Japan is flatlined, China's in a mini depression right now. It's pretty incredible. We're carrying the rest of the world on our shoulders, which is because of what Trump is doing. And the rest of the world has to follow his lead of lowering taxes, lowering spending, deregulating their economy.
America hasn't, Donald Trump hasn't really lowered taxes, has he? He's put taxes up massively in the form of tariffs. But again, this is the problem with listening to a slave. You're not going to learn an awful lot. And this guy is one of Donald Trump's personal slaves. He lives in Donald Trump's harem. So there you go. But what he does say is true, as is usual. You get a bit of truth from these people. It is true that America's looking like the strongest economy, and that somehow they get growth. You know, every other Western country is just stagnant. I mean, Spain has had some growth recently, which is quite interesting. But yeah, like Germany, like the countries that are usually compared to America are put in the same category, like Germany, France, Britain, Canada, once upon a time, Japan, it was mentioned there, China even. Well, China's a different one, but you know, they're not getting anything like what America's getting in terms of GDP growth. And not only that, but it just doesn't look like they ever will, like ever again. Can anybody imagine Canada's GDP growing by 4% in a year again? It's almost like unimaginable that such a thing would happen. Whereas America, they found a way, haven't they?
Well, historically, in times of uncertainty, capital does flow towards America, or to the most sure place. So that's what we're seeing now. And in Canada,
yeah, a lot of people like to go to the dollar, the greenback.
Our finances. Yesterday, the Government Operations Committee voted a new requirement that would have future candidates for the Parliamentary Budget Officer to be interviewed by the committee. This would allow from input from all recognized parties. We were talking about this yesterday. There's an ad out from the federal government for this position right now, which highlights that they want someone who has tact and discretion to be looking into our finances.
Well, he's supposed to be, the clue's in the name, he's supposed to be the parliamentary budget officer. He's supposed to represent all of Parliament, isn't he? So it's, they have a lot of sort of justification to do this.
For sure. And this, the interim party parliamentary budget officer has called the budget we passed shocking and stupefying. So, okay.
Indeed, and the Liberals didn't like that one bit, did they?
Well, trying to replace them. And we've also passed a bill yesterday, Bill C3, which grants Canadian status to the grandchildren of citizens abroad. And citizens abroad counts as people who lived in Canada as a citizen for only 3 years. So, seems like quite a bit. You can come live here for 3 years, move back to wherever, move somewhere else, have a child, they have a child, and now this child has the right to Canadian citizenship.
And then this has been like the catchphrase for this is, you know, these are lost Canadians. I mean, is the grandchildren of a citizen abroad, is that a Canadian? Is that a lost Canadian? It's a very curious thing. I mean, there are other countries in the world that have this, but those countries they really have like an ethnic identity. Often those other countries, like Italy. You may not know this, but the Italians are very sort of proud of their ethnicity, like who they are as a people, and their kind of, you know, their blood. The Italians are like that. Obviously, Canada's not. Canada's not a country like that.
Well, those
so it's quite strange.
Have been around for so long. Canada, always a melting pot. Always, everyone immigrated here, other than the Indigenous people. So there is.
Well, they did as well, obviously. Well, they migrated. They migrated to Canada. They didn't. Unless there's an out of North America theory of human evolution. Some people do say that. But yeah, they also, it's generally reckoned, came over. But yeah, I mean, it's also to do with, I mean, Italy's a very new country in terms of like its current, like as a unified country. It was only created in, can't remember exactly when it was, sometime in the 19th century, I think 1870s or something like that. It's relatively new.
Kind of Roman cultural continuing on though, isn't it?
It's a what, sorry?
Kind of like Roman culture. It's like the end of that.
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, yeah, kind of. But there are lots of Italian republics were created when the Germanic horde, when they came in and finished off the Roman Empire in the Dark Ages, so called. They ended up creating like republics, like the Republic of Genoa and whatnot. Anyway, they eventually got together and unified. That was Garibaldi and all that malarkey. And they made a very sort of purposeful decision to include this. And then there are other countries where you can have this kind of thing, where you can claim to be of the people, like of the blood, and then you get a passport, even if, you know, it was just your granddad or something like that. But it's just a bit stranger. It's a bit weirder for that to apply to Canada. It doesn't even apply to Britain, by the way.
No, I'm a Brit, but
which is another
Brit, so.
Yeah, but if it was just your granddad that was British, and that is the case for quite a lot of Canadians, isn't it? Where, like, their granddad or grandparents are British, they wouldn't be entitled to British citizenship. But if it's the reverse, and you're in Britain with a Canadian granddad, you're Canadian now. So it's a weird one. It's a confusing one. But critics of it anyway have said that it's just vote harvesting again, as usual.
Well, as we've said time and time again, we've had unsustainable immigration, and now we've granted the right for more people to come on over if they so choose. And
Indeed.
The Prime Minister has been abroad lately, trying to drum up investment from the Emirates. We've got a clip of him here responding to a reporter when asked about if he brought up Sudan during these talks.
Did you bring up allegations? Sudan with the president?
I'll say one thing that on that the president and I had a wide-ranging, long meeting, wide-ranging conversation. We talked about issues of global significance. We are partners. For example, UAE has been an important partner for Canada in helping us to deliver humanitarian aid for Gaza. We were partners with them in helping with Afghanistan. We did discuss the situation in Sudan. We did discuss the importance of the Quad process, which is the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Egypt and the role that they are playing, they need to play in establishing a ceasefire and peace, consistent with the comments or the comments and initiative of President Trump 2 days ago.
Were you?
Est-ce que vous avez juste exprimé des craintes au président des Émirats arabes unis?
I don't really think they'd heed any words from Canada anyways.
It's extraordinary, really, isn't it? That the press thinks that this matters. They think that Canada matters. They think that this is the #1 issue. It's just one of the many reasons why the press is treated with contempt in this country by people within this country and also outside. Canadian journalism has no respect anywhere on the planet, not even in Canada. That's one of the reasons. Just completely futile, stupid line of questioning. But it's also interesting, I would point out, probably more interesting, and I would have respect for the journalists that follow Mark Carney around if they ask something like this, is how come Carney was hot as you like for Palestine-Israel, coming out condemning Israel, recognizing an official Palestinian state and all the rest of it, and it was like a red line, it was like a really big deal for Mark Carney. Why was he so energized by that, but not this, not Sudan, which by almost every measure is worse than that conflict in Gaza? Why is he not drawing a red line there? Could it possibly be that there aren't very many votes in condemning the rapid support forces in Sudan, but there are a hell of a lot of votes in condemning Israel?
Yep, and also, as we're trying to get this tariff deal done with the states, in condemning Israel, you're alienating the United States. So,
indeed. But then, I mean, to sort of give it a 4D chess angle, he did talk a lot with the UAE about Palestine, and it was in all of the PR stuff that he released. And, you know, some people might argue that Carney's approach to Palestine-Israel has given him, you know, added strength when he goes somewhere like the UAE, which is pro-Palestine, has spent a lot of money on all kinds of dastardly activities in Gaza and the West Bank. Like, he can then go there and say, look, like, I'm on your side. Yeah, down with Israel. Am I right? Now, how about that investment? But I don't know. I mean, that argument that somebody would put out there to defend the Khan dog. But obviously, it hasn't hurt the US and the US's relationship with UAE. So.
Indeed. And Mexico has jumped past Canada to become the US's top customer.
Mexico is basically the indispensable country for America, because it's also it's just its #1 guy. It's its #1 Bezzy, even though you wouldn't guess that the way that they treat Mexico, but it's true. The Mexicans took away the #1 exporter to the US, and they took that away from Canada, and now they've taken imports as well.
And the Liberal government has committed $528 million to the European Space Agency. I'm going to play a clip about this. There's some other interesting aspects to this story that'll be highlighted.
The Prime Minister, who describes himself as a European, is giving $500 million to the European Space Agency to create good jobs in Europe. And it gets worse, because the Harwell Science and Innovation Campus, where the European Space Agency will be is located in the UK, is 50% owned by Brookfield. Rather than focusing on lining the pockets of Brookfield and not ripping off Canadian workers, why don't they invest in Canada?
It's unfortunate the other side doesn't recognize the key role that space investments play in our country and our national innovation, especially in a critical year for Space for Canada, where we're sending not 1 but 2 astronauts into space. This is an incredibly exciting time for Canada and Canadians to be inspired by the potential of space and space in our economy,
Okay,
and I hope
good.
the other side reconsiders their opposition.
That really made me laugh when I saw it. We're so proud. We're not sending one, but 2 astronauts into space this year from Canada. But yeah, Brookfield just keeps coming up. It's
Yeah, the B word. We can't get away from the B word.
Deal after deal.
But they're just not engaging with it. Again, to bring up my favorite subject, faith in democracy, trust in democracy. Do you think if you just showed that, like Clockwork Orange style, to a random Canadian citizen and made them watch that, do you think that they would their trust and faith in Canadian democracy would increase or decrease? Like, asked a pretty basic question about possible corruption, I guess you would say, or something a little bit fishy. I mean, you could argue that was opportunistic as well, which it obviously was. And then the response is, "Oh, why don't you like space, dude? Like, why are you so against Canada in space?" It's like,
well,
how could anybody have faith in that? How could anybody enjoy that? It's just, as usual, immature, irresponsible, despicable behavior from grown men who pretend to be rulers of this country.
And I don't think we even have faith in our own space program, as he said, because it was like 100 and something million that we spent on our own space program. Why wouldn't we keep this money at home and invest in Canadian space instead of sending, 5 times more over to the Europeans?
Well, it's Oxford as well they're talking about there, that Harwell campus, so they can hook up with Chrystia Freeland, who's going to be living over there. It's just great time to be in Oxford.
Indeed. And as we were saying, Brookfield keeps coming up and up and up again in these stories. And Prime Minister, this is a story from Holly Doan at Blacklocks again. Prime Minister Mark Carney has the highest ethics and should be commended for accumulating a large stock portfolio. His chief of staff yesterday told the Commons Ethics Committee.
That's
Super
good.
ethical. He's holding up the pound.
But we're talking about Trump slaves. This guy's a Carney slave. And we're talking about ancient Rome. If he went and knocked on the door, Julius Caesar's door, and his slave answered the door, would you expect his slave to provide any information that might harm his master's reputation? Oh, God, these people are just... I don't know, do they deserve pity? They are pitiable, but I don't know if they deserve any pity.
And if you're talking about belief in Canadian democracy, his own slave is running this ethics commission. What does that say about our dear government?
Indeed. Yeah, it's the Liberals, again, go back to the press. If the press was functional in Canada, the Liberals would pay a huge reputational price for all of this. But they're not paying a price because the press obviously is dysfunctional. So, we learn about it in Blacklocks. Whoever's listening to us learns about it through us. What Blacklocks have put out there. They'll know all about it in Ottawa, all the political people, but we're in a democracy. It doesn't ultimately really matter what these small numbers of people think. It's the people at large that count, and they don't even know about this. Or maybe they do know and they don't care, because obviously the Liberals just keep being elected.
Well, I'm on the CBC's website right now, and there's not a mention of any of this. So, yeah.
Although we're being nice to the CBC today, aren't we? Because they did have a good story about the ER. But I mean, I've just gone on that page, and it's like Volodymyr Zelensky.
Well, we seem to.
Why don't you push your best story that you have and put that at the top?
No. And the Department of National Defence in Canada is going to hire 3,000 public servants from other departments.
Joy.
Yeah.
Joyous.
Get the
I'd be happy to do that rather than be enlisted, given a rifle.
Definitely. And as we see bureaucracy expanding jobs in different sectors, Bell Canada has laid off 700 more people.
Business News BCE, which owns us here at CTV News, confirming it has laid off nearly 700 people today. A spokesperson at Bell saying the reduction represents less than 2% of the workforce. It includes 650 management positions, along with 40 positions at Bell Media, which owns CTV News. Bell says the move affects non-unionized management positions and is part of its, quote, 3-year strategic plan focused on delivering sustainable growth across all business units.
Funny, wasn't it? The first one. The second one was very clear, but the first one was like, which on CTV? It's like, shh. But then he kind of spoiled it at the end because he was like, which owns CTV News? Sometimes they're very secretive about that. But yeah, Bell, they absolutely love to fire people, don't they? They're just doing it willy-nilly. Can you remember when Justin Trudeau had a massive rant a few years ago at Bell? Irresponsible media proprietors. But I guess Carney's not bothered.
No, I think TELUS has seen quite a few layoffs too this year, so it's all over. Food professor, we've got another story from him today. He's saying that for the skyrocketing meat prices, government can take action right now, lift import restrictions on beef products, and get our supply management in order for poultry. The meat prices are out of control, and they shouldn't be. We got a clip here.
For maybe I spend like $50 to $80 a week, weekly, but now it's like $150, $200.
You're getting used to the high prices.
Yeah. It's back to life, I guess.
Food price experts say those looking for a deal in the aisles are quickly learning that at the moment, there's really no safe place inside a Canadian grocery store. This month's inflation report found that food prices in October rose by 3.4%, down from a 4% spike in September. So as of right now, any incremental decrease in food inflation on a month-to-month basis isn't being felt by Canadians.
Because the challenge that we have with food inflation right now is that it remains way above general inflation.
Leading the way when it comes to the priciest pickings at your local grocer, the meat counter.
2 chicken breasts, it used to be like $7, now it's like $15-20 for 2 little chicken breasts, right?
All chicken prices are up 23% year to year. Ground beef is up almost 22% as well. Proteins in general is almost 40% of all the money you spend at the grocery store.
With the federal government dropping counter tariffs against the U.S., there is a hope that the rate of food price inflation will continue to decrease and finally be passed down to consumers as stores slash prices to keep loyal customers coming back for a second helping. Prices here at the grocery store remain elevated and have exceeded overall inflation for 9 consecutive months. Adrian Gober.
Terrible. Absolutely abysmal, isn't it?
I think we've all noticed the grocery prices going up. Which politician was...
and they were already just disgustingly high. And then now they're even higher.
Who was it that admitted they didn't do their own grocery shopping? Which one was that? Do you remember that story?
That was Carney.
Yeah, I thought it was Carney. So he's not paying attention to notice it.
He also said, and this is a quote which I have in front of me, Canadians will hold us to account by their experience at the grocery store when they are paying their electricity bill, when they or their children are looking for a place to live. Not really, not doing well on any of those. That's quite a hostage to fortune. That was in May that he said that. And we're all holding on to that hostage now.
Yep, and the budget has passed, so we are strapped in for a while by the looks of it. Another...
Indeed. But it's absolutely disgraceful. And I'm sure if Jim was here, we should point out, Jim's in Japan. Andrea's filling in, if anybody's curious. Jim hasn't transformed into a woman. But as Jim points out, and lots of other people, there's just like, this country has absolutely no business being this poor. This is poverty, by the way. You might just say, oh, high prices, darn. Another way to look at that, and a more sensible and clear way to look at that, is poverty. That's being poor. If you can't buy chicken and beef because it's too expensive in a country, that means your country is poor, and so are you, by the way. But Canada just has absolutely, there's no reason why this country should be poor. Like, this country should, we should be so wealthy in this country that we should sort of send cargo out to the less fortunate world and give them our free beef and
Well,
chicken.
we're
It's
still
it's
sending
just
cargo out
such
to
an
the
indictment
world.
of the idiots that rule this place.
We do still send money out abroad. Lots of money out abroad.
That's true.
Yeah.
And more. And it should, like, well, we do, and it upsets people. But we should be able to do it, and it shouldn't upset people. The only reason it upsets people is because they're poor themselves. So they're thinking, like, why the hell should I give other poor people stuff? Like, I don't have stuff. I can't buy meat.
Well,
Why should I be giving money to people in countries like China and Vietnam or whatever? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. But I'm saying Canada should be a country where we can give it away and be like, yeah, definitely. Like, they should have beef too. Like, I just had 10 steaks yesterday. We should let other people have one.
There should be no reason why child hunger is on the rise in this country. And then Health Canada has indefinitely paused its proposed policy on the cloned meat. I haven't looked into the science enough of this to really have an opinion. I'm not sure if the cloned meat has equivalent nutritional value. What do you know about this one?
About as much as you, apparently. I know people get very, very, very excited about it, but I don't think it's cloning, and I don't think it's like a science fiction movie. I think it's like it's a bit of a different process.
Yeah.
But quite obviously, like it's new, isn't it? It's an innovation, and people are rightfully, I think, very mistrustful of innovations in food because there have been quite a lot over the last 50, 100 years or whatever, and quite a lot of them have been harmful. And greedy people and stupid people have been in charge of pushing them onto the population without doing adequate testing and whatnot. So I think the skepticism is broadly justified. You can understand why people are skeptical. But yeah, I mean, I'll withhold comment on that specifically because I really don't know enough about it.
I will as well. And we have seen most of our vegetables are genetically modified. And when you look into what they are optimizing for, it's often how they look as opposed to what they're giving you nutritionally. So I do also agree that the skepticism is warranted. And now we have the story we were talking about earlier. Conservatives are trying to amend the Borders Bill, C-12, which seeks asylum ban for anyone arriving via an EU or G7 country. And it also is trying to make the process for deporting people who are here illegally or who've committed serious crimes a bit easier. Both sound pretty rational to me.
Are we going to have this video?
Oh, we got a video.
Yeah, we are. Okay.
This week, British news was dominated by sweeping immigration reforms proposed by the governing Labour Party in response to the ongoing illegal migration and bogus asylum claim crisis, a crisis that has triggered a massive support for the right-wing Reform Party. Those who think that the situation is better on our side of the pond are profoundly wrong. Between January 22 and October of this year, the United Kingdom has had around 375,000 people enter the country and make asylum claims, representing about 0.5% of their overall population. During the same time, Canada had nearly 496,000 claims, or roughly 1.2% of our population today. Liberals have also paired the surge in illegal
Just thought that was very interesting because usually when we hear about Britain, the UK, and lessons to be learned for Canada, usually it's precisely the wrong lesson. And usually it's like, let's do what they did 10 years ago to trash their country. But the Conservatives, in this case, seem to have discovered that the British are actually trying to fix some of the problems that they made for themselves in recent years.
And I think a large reason why Brexit did pass was against the immigration, and they haven't necessarily seen the results from Brexit. Even though
it just got many times worse, which is why the Conservative Party in Britain is now a corpse, soon to be completely dead and buried and forgotten forever, because they oversaw a massive expansion in immigration. The absolute fools that they are.
Well,
and the British people said they didn't want it, and now they're going to vote for Nigel Farage.
And we'll see how that goes. Freeland also moving to the UK for her prestigious job at Oxford, as you mentioned. So,
while also apparently administering billions of dollars of aid in Ukraine from Canada. But at least she's got the walk. She looks like Morpheus in The Matrix, doesn't she?
Just got to have the dress being black.
The woman in the purple dress. I guess she's she must be delighted. She lived in England for ages, just like so many of Canada's rulers, and apparently, like so many of Canada's rulers, learned precisely the wrong lessons and then came back to Canada and implemented all the failures that the British had just gone through. And so I guess maybe she's going to get the next couple of decades worth of insight so that she could come back and implement those mistakes that haven't even been made yet in England. She's going to learn about it, come to Canada, and then implement those mistakes here.
Time will tell. Also going overseas, billions of Canadian taxpayer dollars to support climate action.
Provided $750 million to FinDev Canada for loans for green infrastructure projects, including in Southeast Asia. For example, a $59 million project supporting Thailand's renewable energy transition through the construction of solar technology and battery storage. $40 million in another project to support climate finance initiatives in Vietnam, just as a couple of examples. Also working very closely with regional partners such as the Asian Development Bank to support energy transition to renewable sources, including support for a 600 megawatt wind farm in Lao PDR.
I wish we were rich enough to justify sending billions overseas.
Well, often again, like the 4D chess people, as I was mentioning earlier with Israel or Palestine, often they'll come out and justify this and they'll say, no, shh, it's not as stupid as it seems. Actually, this will get us loads of contracts in those countries. I've never been convinced by that argument, that it's almost like a kind of bribe. I mean, if you want to bribe a country, just bribe them. You know what I mean? Like just deposit money into the president's bank account. If that's what you're doing, why sort of add this farcical like moral veneer to it? You know, it's
well, so
but otherwise, if it is what it looks like it is, then it's just madness, isn't it? And completely unjustifiable.
Like many things we see lately. And on to our BC news.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
And this is a big story. A group of Alaska Tribal nations is going to the BC Supreme Court to demand a seat at the table in Canadian resource development. This is obviously some repercussions of what we've been seeing the last month or so with First Nation bands here claiming territory.
Well, it's a bit like the carbon capture people in America who've realized that the gig is up. They're not going to get subsidies anymore. It's not possible anymore. So they come to Canada. It's like where it's a paradise for that kind of thing. And they get massively subsidized by you and me. These tribes apparently have seen like, oh, hold on. I really like what I'm seeing coming out of these courts in BC and Canada. Like, let's go over there and try our luck. Like, we failed in America. Let's give it a go. And to be honest, they'll probably get whatever it is they want.
I kind of hope not, because that would be yet another group involved in this pipeline debacle. So.
And why not? You know, might as well let everybody join in.
Yeah. And then in international news is the end of
coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
BC was a bit skinny on the news today, but possibly good news internationally is the end of the Russia-Ukraine war finally in sight. The 28-point peace talks going through. What do you think?
It's pretty rough for the Ukrainians to accept it. And Zelensky came out a couple of hours ago saying, we're either going to lose our dignity or we're going to lose America, basically. But he didn't say America. He said like one of our biggest partners or something like that. But they're being asked to shrink their army to 600,000, I think, which is not enough. I mean, that to Canadian ears, that's like, what, 600,000? Like, let's have it. That would be like the biggest army ever from a Canadian perspective, considering we can't recruit anyone. But the Ukrainians aren't going to be happy about that. Also, basically give away the whole Donbass, so Donetsk and Luhansk, and also Crimea. Agree not to join NATO or apply to join NATO. So, like some other things, to sort of restrictions on the kind of equipment that they can have, I think. And then in return, they get peace, and they also get a promise from America that America will intervene if Russia attacks again. But that already existed anyway. As you don't hear that so much nowadays, but America signed an agreement decades ago pledging to protect Ukraine if it was threatened, to protect Ukraine's borders, and they didn't act on it. So I don't really know what that's going to mean to the Ukrainians, but I think the reality is Trump wants to end this war. Everybody in Ukraine wants to end this war, and basically everybody in Russia wants to end this war, except for a few people. So that's kind of like, I think it's the Trump people and Trump himself is just trying to get this over with any way that that it can be achieved. But this is going to upset the Ukrainians if it happens.
Well, and the Ukrainians had a much better deal offered. What was it, March of 2023? If they would have taken that one. So, are they going to take this one? Let it go further down.
Yeah, they were offered. They had a much better, a much better deal on the table not long after the war started.
Yeah,
I think it was Boris Johnson as well. It was a very, very consequential intervention from him, and he basically said, "No matter what happens, like we'll be there for you," kind of thing. Like, don't give in, don't surrender.
And now they've
But
lost.
like everything else that Boris Johnson has ever done, it looks very foolish and ill-judged.
Indeed. Oh, we've got actually Zelensky talking. Let's listen to him.
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні у мене була зустріч з представниками Сполучених Штатів, вагома делегація і дуже серйозна розмова. Американська сторона надала свої пропозиції, пункти плану, щоб закінчити війну. Їхнє бачення. Ми з перших днів війни займаємо одну надзвичайно просту позицію. Україні потрібен мир. І справжній мир, такий, який не зламає третє вторгнення. Достойний мир, щоб умови були з повагою до нашої незалежності, нашого суверенітету, до гідності українського народу. І ми саме такі умови маємо забезпечити. Я окреслив, що саме для нас.
Sounds so much cooler in Ukrainian, doesn't he? He sounds almost sounds a bit daft when he speaks English, but in Ukrainian he's got some real gravitas.
Kind of like our
But yeah, I mean,
MPs.
shouldn't be taking the P because it's an extremely solemn address that he's made there. It's a very serious address, and as usual, really, whenever I look at this story, I just feel so much pity for the Ukrainian people. I just feel so bad for them. And as I've mentioned before when we've talked about Ukraine, it's just been non-stop for the Ukrainians. It's been non-stop, going back decades and centuries. They're just always being screwed over, the Ukrainians, and God bless them, frankly.
Indeed. Indeed. And the U.S. is to deem countries promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, mass immigration, transgender surgeries, and more as human rights violators. That's an interesting one.
This is hilarious, isn't it? This just came out today, I think. This is like more bad news. The JD Vance thing, there's plenty of other things as well coming out of America. It's not good, is it? Because Canada's one of the few countries that's still going absolutely gung-ho on DEI and all the rest of that kind of, the fringe left critical ideas that originated in the American universities. The Americans have worked that through their system to some extent, at least. Canada's still feasting at the banquet, of these now discarded American ideas, and to the extent that the Americans are even saying, "Oi, like if you keep our ideas from 20 years ago, we're going to punish you."
Well, And the UK could have completely avoided COVID-19 lockdowns if officials had taken the virus seriously in early 2020. An inquiry.
Yeah, an inquiry, $370 million inquiry, has come out and told them what is obvious to most people in Britain, something that I've been saying for decades, which is that the British ruling class, the administrators in Britain, in the British system, are dangerously, very, very dangerously incompetent, incapable, and stupid, including this gigantic fool who you see a picture of here, who is responsible for this. I mean, I was actually in England and in January 2020, and I can remember everything was about COVID in China, and I think it had arrived in Italy or something by that point, and they were starting to like worry about it in Italy, and in Britain, these absolute buffoons, these morons, and it's no problem for us. Like, it's not going to be any concern for us. Obviously, like just go about your business. It's totally fine, everybody. And I think there was a little bit of like, don't be stupid and get masks or anything like that. Like, stop wasting your time. And it was the same in British Columbia and across Canada, I should say. And now, obviously, we learned from the Swedes. The Swedes actually implemented a plan that the British government had prepared years before for the possibility of a coronavirus spreading. British actually had that idea in place and then chose to ignore it because Boris Johnson is, as I say, almost dangerously stupid. The Swedes implemented it and ended up having the best results of basically anybody in the world when it came to COVID, and they didn't have to lock down. It's tragic. But this is the thing, it's like, sometimes it can just be, it feels like it's just a parlor game, or it's just like a dinner party conversation. Like, oh yeah, David Eby, as an example, like, God, he's stupid, isn't he? Or Justin Trudeau, wow, what a moron. Like, he keeps making mistakes. Like, there are very, very real consequences. It's not just like a laugh at a dinner party. It can be like the near destruction of your economy, as happened in Britain, and the deaths of God knows how many people, and so much misery inflicted on a population. Having incompetent leaders it's devastating. It's one of the worst things that can happen to your country, and it's deadly serious.
And another deadly serious headline: France's top military officer called for a willingness to sacrifice children and urged cities to prepare for potential war.
They're mad, aren't they, the French? A lot of the Swedes have been saying things like this as well. And they're not usually mad, the Swedes. But the French, I don't know, man. From day to day, you'll hear different kind of apocalyptic vision coming out of some French official. Often they come out and say something about an impending civil war and how Islamists are going to take over France and stuff like that. So, I don't know. But in this case, I don't know. I mean, it's on the face of it true, isn't it? That if you go to war, then that really does require a lot of sacrifices.
And another piece of American news: Trump is going to meet Zoran Mandami, the mayor of New York, today.
Go on and on. You have a person who wants to further increase taxes and devastate New York, and he wants to nationalize grocery stores and other things. I can tell you there's a lot of people who have gone into the White House before and tried to make a scene and tried to have a big PR event, and I think most of the people got laughed out of it. I mean, we saw that with Zelensky. I think I could probably name 25 people who went into the White House trying to be tough guys, and it didn't end up all that well for them. My father's, I think, performs probably better than anybody in that moment, but we'll see. I mean, my father loves New York. He cares about New York. He wants to see the best for New York. So he would have an open door, and I'm proud of him for having an open door. I don't think this is the right direction from New York. I hope this guy is a lot more bravado than he is real action, but we'll see tomorrow. And and again, this is Donald Trump at his best. If the guy wants to showboat, I think he'll showboat right back. And there's no one that does that better than the commander in chief, as you know better than anybody,
Wow.
Laura. Go.
So they're talking about like it's The Apprentice or American Idol or something, aren't they? Which I guess is not too far away from reality.
WWE wrestling.
But it's, yeah, I mean, I say that, and yet at the same time, obviously, I'll be watching that, and I'll get the popcorn out. So I'm as bad as everyone else, really.
Yeah, and I think that mayor, he got in because citizens of New York were voting against continuing to support the war in Israel. I really think that was the key issue.
Yeah, he was very anti-Israel, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But he was also kind of, he was offering a kind of socialism.
Quite socialist, yeah. So we'll see.
And I think there's an appetite for that in places like New York, because even though that's like the richest city in the world by, if you just look at the numbers, the reality of life there for
day to day
for a lot of people is pretty limited. It's pretty miserable for a lot of people in New York City. So, they're open to whatever. They're open to mad ideas because they're sick. They're sick of it.
I think Canadians are going to get to that point sooner than later as well. And for the first time in 10 years, there were no landfalling hurricanes in the U.S. this season. That's some good news. Just kind of luck.
Yeah, that is good news, isn't it?
Yeah. Good luck
They're
there.
not nice, are they, hurricanes?
No, quite devastating. But we did see a fire at the COP30 climate talks. Kind of what Elizabeth May's been warning about.
Wasn't it set? I thought it was arson, I'd heard, but I'm completely.
Yeah,
I'm not informed on this one.
I heard that as well. It is kind of fishy, just a building breaking out, So, who knows?
But the COP has been these talks have been exposed as just completely ridiculous waste of time, haven't they? Like they had a big they were going to write something like a I don't know, a memo or something that they all signed, like a declaration, and that's fallen apart today. And they've removed any mention of fossil fuels. It's just, the consensus that existed in like 2015 and a little bit after that, that's gone now. And
the world has moved.
I don't know, it seems like a lot of people at conventions like this haven't figured that out yet. I don't think they quite realize how dead that ideology is now, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, Canada seems to be the only one still flogging that dead horse. And Fuji's rapper sentenced to 14 years in prison for funneling millions to Obama's campaign.
This is just like the craziest story that I've read today. But I've put it right at the end because obviously it's America and it's like maybe less for us to talk about. But this is just insane. Like a famous musician given 14 years in prison. The Justice Department wanted life imprisonment. Leonardo DiCaprio testified, and it's all about some Malaysian billionaire who tried to funnel millions of dollars, like $120 million or something like that, tried to funnel that into Barack Obama's 2012 presidential campaign. This is a totally insane story. I can't believe it's not getting more attention, frankly.
Well, we've given it some attention today, and that's our news for November 21st. Thank you for watching Now Media. We're here every weekday at 9 a.m.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence.
Nice.
Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.